out a question card for our candidates and officials. Go ahead and do so now. We're gathering those up, and then I'll read a few of them here and there.
Do we have a timing?
Does anyone need a blank card?
Is there a timing on this?
So I want to thank again all of our participants tonight. Let's give them a round of applause. The possibility to have events like this where we have an opportunity to talk more openly and casually in a conversation, I think will benefit all of us to help you as officials in our government and as arts organizations to understand better how our government works, how it can help us, and how we might be able to work together on future collaborations. Arts Forward Bloomington, as I mentioned before, is the idea that we can help solve a lot of our own problems together. So in working with the Arts Alliance here in Bloomington, gathering everyone together so that we can address issues that we might have resources that we can share, I think is our first step. And another little card that was available to you on the table as you walked in announces our next of those big quarterly meetings that I discussed, which will be coming up on January 14th, 2020 at 7 p.m. at the Buzzkirk Chumley Theater. So save that date, plan on coming, bring forward your issues and your opportunities that you would like to see us as a community take advantage of or solve. And here's some of our questions.
Now, a couple of these I wrote, and my handwriting is atrocious. I assumed I was going to be reading them. So if you stumble on those, let me know. I'll be happy to talk. Or does that have to be written?
I think we're going to do this first because of we have some issue.
I got you.
You got one?
No problem.
All right. Well, good to do it. Okay. This setup is mostly because of the length of the cord of the microphone and the need to have amplification so that we get a good recording, good presentation to cats. So the first question I have from the audience is, how do you see the distinction between Bloomington and other medium-sized cities like Muncie, Kokomo, Anderson, and how would you propose preserving that distinction? I think we will give just a 3-minute time limit to responses so that we can get through more of the questions and have more of you respond. Anyone like to take that on? How are we going to preserve? How do we keep Bloomington, Bloomington? I think is the issue.
I'll try. That's the way to say it.
So, what a great question. We are spoiled here. I think you're absolutely right. So as we think about the distinction between Bloomington and other cities, a couple things occur to me. First is more of a philosophical issue. I think anything we could do to create opportunities for young people, for youth, to participate in the arts is critical. Certainly we have very robust audiences now, but I think anytime we can create opportunities for them to see a play at a reduced cost, or visit a gallery that they haven't been to before, or spend time with a docent at a museum, those are valuable things, and they create people who are interested in the arts for years to come, and I think that's pretty critical. Beyond that, I think we have the kinds of investments that we've talked about here so far. I think we have an opportunity to continue to use TIF funds and other resources for that. I love the idea, and many of you might have paid attention to the convention center meeting last night. I think we have an opportunity with that, maybe even with the repurposing of the hospital site, to look at opportunities for that mid-sized venue. So I think we have a number of opportunities to think strategically about that, to think about how Switchyard Park can fit into our collection of performance venues and how that works. So it's funny, I never think of Muncie as catching up on with due respect for anyone who's from Muncie. But I think we need to maintain that ethic of care for our arts community that keep it front and center in these kinds of conversations. So, thanks.
So I think from our distinction from other mid-sized cities in Indiana is our ability to promote. So I think from where I've lived in Indiana and where I've visited, the amount of arts and entertainment that hit the mainstream, hit the airwaves, is drastically larger here than any other city. So that and alone distinguishes us from these other cities. Also, with how much we have other towns that have universities in them. However, our university also plays a huge role in that, in propelling who we are as a city. So I think the combination of your voices plus our university allows that distinction to happen. How do we preserve that? Well, I mean, that's the same sentiment as in Portland. They said, keep Portland weird, and how do you do that? You just keep propelling that. So how do we keep Bloomington unique? I mean, how do we keep ourselves on the forefront in this venture? And it's, putting our art in more visible locations like Switchyard and new development. I'm on the Plan Commission. I'm here tonight because art is very important to me. And I believe that, when we created the Comprehensive Master Plan, Chapter 2 is identity. And we focused on identity for multiple meetings because it's extremely important to us. And so by incorporating that into our developments and our land use, that will help preserve us as we grow as a city, not only in square mileage, but also in population. So I think as our developments grow, so will our art. And that's how we'll preserve it.
Let's move to the next question, and I'll just sort of encourage each of you, if you haven't yet answered a question, to try and jump in so we hear everybody's voice. But several members of the Bloomington Arts Commission are here tonight. How can we best engage you individually and the Common Council as a group to work cooperatively to enhance the arts and its role in our community? What information and reporting would you value to make the BAC and the arts a priority for council?
Yeah, I think having forums like this is a great start. What I would really love to know is, and several people have mentioned this previously, is to have an inventory of public art. And to add to that, to have kind of a geographic analysis of where the arts opportunities are in Bloomington, and to make sure that there aren't neighborhoods that are left out, and that we bring arts to all different parts of the city and not just downtown. So some kind of geographic analysis, I think, would be very helpful.
I think also understanding the nature of the budgeting process in Bloomington. In the city of Bloomington, the administration forms the budget and the council approves it. The council does not have the authority to increase a budget line. It can only cut funding. So that's something to know, that you can come to us directly and appeal to us, but we have at best an indirect ability to affect the budget. Now, having said that, it was a couple of years ago that the Hamilton administration shifted the $50,000 that was an annual donation to the Buskirk-Chumley from the whatever department it was in into the city council's budget directly, because so many city council members were saying, we want to maintain this support for this building that provides so many arts to people. And so, we do have an impact, but just understanding that distinction, I think, is important. Also, I think that, better ties with the Convention and Visitors Bureau and anybody else who promotes Bloomington as a destination would help both the arts community and the Convention and Visitors Bureau. That you have sort of mutual interests, and just sort of being able to articulate more specifically the impact that the arts have on the community, not just financially, but socially, I think is in the interest of everyone. So just a couple of thoughts, but the most important thing I think to take from that is that we are absolutely advocates for the arts. I don't think there's anybody on the council who isn't. I don't think there's anybody here in this forum who isn't. The question is, where can we best put our effort to make the most improvements for everyone?
One thing, boom. One of the things I have questions about too is the tension between project support for a particular initiative, and operational support, salaries and things like that. So I think that kind of ongoing feedback from the arts community regarding the funding that comes from the city is very, very helpful. So
That was kind of close to 15 seconds.
I would like a 15 second. It was the question was about how to involve us and engage us. I think if I'm on a city council, I'd like you to invite me to some meetings. I'd like you to keep me on sending. You could send notes to what you're working on, so that we can anticipate any funding issues or program issues or street issues or city issues that might overlap with that. Then we can anticipate anything we might want to work on at the council level. Thank you.
Have any of you been to an art commission meeting?
I have a conflict. It's on my list. It's been on my list for a while. I'll be at one soon. Starting in the spring, I want my conflict.
Because they're open to public.
All right, there's been a lot of talk about Lotus and other established organizations, but how will you support new festivals and organizations such as Midway Music Speaks, Cicada Cinema, any new and evolving organizations? One thing I will say really quickly, because it does relate to city funding as it comes through the BCT, that we have the Art Startup Program, which offers free education and art startup funding for ongoing festivals or events that will happen either at the BCT or the John Waldron Arts the John Waldron Arts Center. And there's also the BCT Movie Partner Project that allows you rent-free use of the theater at if you are presenting a film. Any day, anytime, you want to present a film at the theater, and you can wait until 3 months before the show happens to actually market it, you can get rent-free there. Does anyone have?
I'll be brief just to save time for the candidates in challenging races, but challenged races. But I will say council members will have a platform, so helping highlight things like Midway Music Speaks. Is that what it's called, Midway Music Speaks? Sorry, Rachel. So at the beginning of council meetings, they have council members have the opportunity to highlight new and upcoming things, make note of things, and it's amazing how many people watch Cats and tune in on a regular basis, or at least at the beginning. So that's a really good venue, as well as maybe not the 6-hour meetings, but no, in social media channels. We have a platform as elected officials, and we should absolutely be willing to use that to help support these great upstart organizations, festivals that we have in Bloomington.
So this goes back to, and Matt's 100% right, city council members have a platform that is not only digital, but also in person. And being, going to public events, just being there. Half the battle is just showing up. So going to BAC meeting is half the battle. But collaboration. Back to my point, collaboration. That's what is in the 2015 master plan, and that is what we need to do to ensure that new projects, efforts get support. I mean, so we have to involve more than just city council and the city, but also community members and economic drivers such as our local businesses. That is really how we will get there. As Councilmember Volan said, city council can only cut the budget. They can't create the amount that's there. So you have to work within your boundaries, and I think that's an opportunity that each one of us would have to be able to do that.
All right. One last question, and then at that point, we're just going to kind of open up the room for everyone to have individual conversations with everyone for the last 15 minutes or so of our time. But this last question, I think, is very important. I do want to encourage all of our respondents to focus specifically on what the arts and the City Council, through their support of the arts, can do regarding this question. But across the country, arts organizations are working hard to spotlight artists from marginalized communities. In Bloomington, we are in the midst of a lot of necessary conversations and actions about white supremacy. What are Arts Forward Bloomington and the City Council going to do to specifically combat white supremacy in their support of the arts? If I can add that to the question, just so we focus it carefully. One of the things I can say for Arts Forward Bloomington is this would be an ideal question for one of our large quarterly meetings, to talk as a community of artists, of a community of arts organizations, on how we might, as a community, do something, and what would be the best way to do that. So having given you that time to think.
Of course, it's not an easy question to answer, but to piggyback on the previous question, all too often the public comment at the beginning of a city council meeting is unused or used by people who have, shall we say, quite divergent agendas, worrying about fluoride in the water, or conspiracy theories about previous presidents, and as if they use it at all. And speak as a venue, the open public comment period of council is actually something that not enough people take advantage of. First, I would say that arts organizations of all kinds should come and tell the public about who they are and what they're doing every chance they get. We will make room for you at every regular session of City Council. There is time for it. Secondly, if we do not speak up on a regular basis about the issues in the community that define us, that silence can allow problems like white supremacy to fester. So it's important that we use every venue that we can, first of all, just to express ourselves so that what's being expressed is not hateful speech, because I think everyone in this room is, of that ilk, and I would like to think that most of the city is too. But secondly, to speak, not only through that channel, but through the arts themselves. The promulgating more arts reduces that kind of hateful speech. I don't know how better to serve that. The council, everyone here is going to discover, if they haven't already, how complicated and multifarious being a city council member is. You have to learn a lot of things, a lot of different things, as well as you can, as fast as you can. And so the arts, the fact that we're here and that there is a forum for the arts, I think should say how important the arts are to Bloomington. How emphatically everyone here is speaking in support of the arts. Beyond that, we can help operationalize a strong, positive, active response to hateful speech in the city. How's that?
I think just like the arts, and just like furthering the arts and making sure that people embrace the arts and have that enrichment to their lives, that has to start with children and with young people. And in the same way, embracing other cultures and people who are or look different from yourself also has to start at a young age. So I think marrying those two and having a vibrant multicultural arts education program, starting with preschool-age children, could help and could definitely use the expertise that's in this room to further that mission of just making sure that children interact with people who are not just like them. Maybe the city should do more to do outreach to children for the Blackie Brown Festival or the Festival del Otoño or the Black History Month events. There should be a healthy component of outreach to children starting at a young age, to engage them in artistic expression from other cultures. And I think that will help raise a generation that is not marred by hatred.
Yeah, so very clearly the question stems from what has happened over this spring and summer at the farmers market. I am very proud to have been, I believe, the only candidate up here who has called for the privatization of the farmers market so that the white supremacy can be stamped out of our public farmers market. Whether that involves a private corporation or a nonprofit taking over the farmers market, I don't see which path forward would be best, but I do think the best path forward is to privatize the market and get the white supremacists out. In terms of preventing white supremacy from spreading further in our community and from growing further in the future, what Councilwoman Isabel Piwan-Smith said was very correct. It starts when you're young. Education starts when you're young. I live in a very low-income area of Bloomington. I live right next to Arlington Trailer Park. There's almost no public art by me. I can think of one sculpture at Miller Showers Park or two. That's not acceptable. Those children that live in the trailer park, I guarantee you, are not going to go to the Blackie Brown Festival. They're not going to go to the Lotus Festival. They're not going to have those opportunities. And we need to start making roads into those communities to access them and figure out what we can do to broaden their horizons, what we can do to give them those opportunities, whether that means subsidized tickets or targeting specific schools and specific classes, try and get people into those areas on field trips. We need to figure something out, but I believe that the only way to prevent the spread of white supremacy in our community moving forward is to start by targeting the generations now that are the most flexible, the most moldable, the most able to learn what is and is not proper conduct and proper thought in our society. Thank you.
I think that, and I do not, by any stretch of the imagination, want to sound like a broken record, but Councilwoman Piedmont-Smith said it absolutely 100%, is the youth, is our next generation. Really, it's our next generation. And it's my district, it's District 3, it's the east side. It's not very diverse at all. But I talked about how we promote arts and entertainment, but it's a specific kind of arts and entertainment. And I think bringing more diversity and culture to what we are promoting in our town will really benefit our youth and ourselves. That we still have opportunities to learn and grow as well. And one of the things that I was taught and raised is to show everyone with respect as you want to be treated. And one of the things from our point of view is, or my point of view, I should say, is in terms of the farmers market, as Andrew brought up, having public artwork there that shows diversity, that shows inclusion, that shows that we are a community together. Stomping out hatred and white supremacy by combating it with love and support through our art is that opportunity, is that public display of opportunity that our city desperately needs. Instead of everyone talking one-on-one or through Facebook, a digital platform, it's right there in your face. And the more that you are exposed to it, and the more that our children, I have a 6-month-old daughter, and I want to teach her and expose her to all the different cultures that Bloomington brings in. And I think that we as a community can do that with the BAC and every single one of you, and that's through the public art that we can start putting of more and promoting more diverse culturally type of programming.
Thanks. It's interesting. This is the third meeting I've been in today where we have talked about diversity within the arts and how we reinforce that. And one of the things, yes, many great ideas. And one of the things that occurs to me is that very often stressing diversity in the arts comes down to resources. Do we have resources available to spotlight artists from traditionally underrepresented groups? Do we have an opportunity to create special settings in which we can highlight those artists and commission their work and so forth? I'm a fundraiser, so I geek out about new ways to uncover new resources, new grant programs, individuals who are philanthropically minded in that direction, and that goes back to the notion of creating an arts foundation like the Parks Foundation. So I think any discussion of how the arts advances diversity sooner or later is going to have to touch on the idea of generating resources toward that end. I'm working on a scholarship gift at IU that will focus on the theater and drama department as they try to respond to an industry that is casting with ever more diversity. And I think that's reflective of every arts field as well. So I think resources are key, and I think the feedback from the Arts Commission and individual arts groups about how that could work best and move the needle is going to be very important.
So I have a slightly different take on this. My wife and I have been talking about this a lot since the events at the farmers market. And walking around in neighborhoods, it's one of the topics that has come up recently in my discussion with some people as I walk around and try to give my literature. So I think the question for me is, why are people joining hate groups? And so I thought about it and talked with my wife and my family, and it seems like, IU does themesters. And they take a topic, and everybody does something, or films, or... So I'm wondering about the art community in Bloomington. What if you all picked a time, got together, and asked the question or had themes in your plays or your exhibitions about why people join hate groups? Because that's really the deeper question that we need to know about. I don't really know why people are joining hate groups at this point in our cultural history. Maybe they're disenfranchised. Why are they disenfranchised? How do we bring them back in our direction? So, City Council, I don't know, we can promote or sponsor something like that, but the arts community has an opportunity here. Maybe that's something that you want to think about, or just an idea that has been coming forth in my brain lately. Thank you.
Sure. Obviously a difficult topic to address, and there's no easy solutions. I think we can do better, and there were a lot of good ideas here, including youth education and involvement in the arts, and especially making sure that we are spotlighting and highlighting artists from marginalized communities, and really making sure that we are doing what we can through the arts to address topics of structural and institutional racism and white supremacy. And in addition to what Ron said, I think there are issues around not just folks who end up joining a hate group, say, but a sort of indifference among members of our community who don't understand the way others feel so strongly about how they aren't welcomed at the market, or that we need to find a solution beyond the market as it exists, not just forget about it and move on. And I think art could really play a role there in shaping people's opinions and views, to highlight what it feels like to be someone from a marginalized group at the market. And I've just seen a lot. I was actually out of town for much of the summer, so I was following from afar, but watching the expert panels and watching the mayor's speeches and reading plenty of comments online. And it was just very clear that the rift seemed to center as much as anything around a sort of misapprehension of how this makes a large portion of our community feel. So I think that, to me, is a really great opportunity for the arts to help bridge that understanding gap. People who haven't thought about white supremacy in our community before. And Mayor Hamilton, through all this, has say what you will about a nonprofit, farmers market as the optimal solution here or not. People have diverse opinions on that. But Mayor Hamilton has said repeatedly that we can speak out, and I see that as part of it. That we could ideally, as elected officials, help to highlight that type of art and work on collaborations to bring the arts to the center as a tool to help combat white supremacy, not just for the next generation, but for this generation and folks who haven't maybe given enough thought before. So that's one other thought.
Thank you again so much for such insightful and direct questions. Thank you again to all of our panelists for being here. And Gabe, when we have to get out of the space in 15 minutes, we've got 15 minutes of social
and
networking.
The Arts Alliance has some stuff that they want to pass out as well, upcoming event, right?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So the Arts Alliance will also have resources available at the door as you exit.
That we did invite the mayor's office to participate.
I do, yes, yeah. Just to clarify, all current officials and running candidates were invited to the to this panel this evening. Kate Rosenberger, is that her name right? Yes. Barger, yes. Sent her regrets. She was out of town. Susan Sandberg said yes, but had UDO official business this evening, and Nicole Bolden was sick today, so she wasn't able to make it. So, but thank you again, everyone, for your participation, and we'll just keep talking.